let's start with our finance section. So I'm going to collapse everything just to give you a perspective of what's what and where we are. So let's just collapse everything, and we are going to zoom in a little bit and I'll show you what everything is at. So this first section here, which is development revenue, gross sales, less agents commission at settlement. So that's coming from your construction cost and your sale price and revenue over here. Your other income is coming from other income. So what I've tried to do with everything is that I've tried to color code everything. So when we are setting up, it's all blue. It's clean, simple. When we are doing stuff here, I've used green and blue again, but this is predominantly yellow in the sense that I needed to separate them visually, and that is the reason I designed it this way. So when we get into other revenue, any revenue is all green because this is the color of money, and that's where the money is coming from. So that's why we've used that. I've used a bit of blue with it because it is related to all the costs as well. So we've got other revenue again. This is all green, and development cost is all blue because all these are all costs. And GST, which is a liability that we pay to the taxation office, is all in red. So what we do here in our finance section is that we bring in all the calculations that we've already done, so that you can have a good overview of the money that's coming in, the money that's going out, and you can have a look at all of these things. So the yellow bar up top on all of these sections is where the total for that section is happening. So everything is getting total. Usually we have a total at the bottom of something, but the way I've designed it is that everything totals up into the main head. That is why it's called an account head. So at the moment here in the finance sheet, you'll see that all these values are blank. So if I zoom out and again give you a perspective of where we are at, and you'll see all these values are all blank at the moment, although we have already done these calculations in the previous sheets, but they aren't reflected here at the moment. So that's the reason anytime we open a new sheet, it is best to press the save and refresh button, because then it brings in total from all different sheets and puts them together and prepares you to start entering data into the finance sections. Now the finance section has this breakdown. So before we press the save and refresh button, I'm going to zoom in and show you what each one is. So we are talking about land finance. Now if we were to, before we start construction and after we've already financed our purchase of the land, if there is a possibility for us to refinance it, this is going to come in from this section over here where we said no, we're not going to refinance the land. And we also said no to our mezzanine finance and also no to our developer's loan. And we'll tick them as yes and see how everything comes out. But what I have to remind you is that the moment you'll go yes over here, that means you'll be changing the duration for this land finance. And then that would again trigger another issue, which is going to be you might have allocated something which is going to mess with your timeline. And if your timeline is different, so in our scenario we have our timeline, we have a time when our construction is starting, but now that this was our main loan, this is where we were settling on the land. But if we were to push this out and refinance this loan after 6 months, and it starts here and then construction gets pushed out, all the expenses that you had allocated towards the project that fell between March and November, they will go out of whack. So you need to plan this thing so that all these things are important, and when you make these changes, you are mindful that it might upset a few things. Now it won't really upset everything. If you go in here, what will happen is that these will start showing error because you might have had allocated them to start in a certain month, and all these things will change, so you will need to update them. So I'll show you what happens. There's nothing to worry about. It only takes about 5 minutes before all these changes take effect. But I'll show you each one by one. So this is our land loan refinance. this is our funding table, and this is a concept that I have not seen in any feasibility application ever, but this is the same concept that is used by the bank, by the lender, in order to come up with a total development cost that they will use to calculate a loan to value ratio of the amount of money that they can lend to you based on your cost of the development. And then we'll look into our funding options, and then we'll get into our construction finance, and then mezzanine finance, and developers equity loan. So mezzanine finance only does the interest calculation only. It has no effect on when the money is coming in or when it does have an effect on when the money is coming in and when it's going out, but it does not have a major impact on the actual funds available. But I'll explain each one of them, and it'll become super clear to you what's going on. And quickly at the bottom of this thing, we basically do a quick profit analysis of the project after this stage, because all the finance and interest costs are your last of the expenses that get added, because this goes into an iteration, because your finance and interest costs are part of your total development costs, and total development costs have to include the interest costs. But the interest costs, the amount of money that interest costs are based on the amount of money that you can borrow, and the amount of money that you can borrow is based on the total development costs, which would include the interest costs. So you know what I'm getting at. So it goes into a loop, and that is why this whole thing had to be designed with a code in the background, where this goes into a loop, and it goes into a loop 50 times before it comes up with a probable interest value. And I'll explain each one of them. This is just the geek talk or tech, because I'm fascinated by numbers. I like to figure out how things are working, how they are coming together. But if you're just looking at, this is my money, this is what I'm getting, that's the interest I'm paying, then it does all that for you, and you'll be done with the sheet in 5 minutes. Actually less than 5 minutes, as long as you come in and enter two values, select your funding option, and then you are done. So let's look at each one of these. So the first thing that we want to do is press this save and refresh, so we can get all these values up top here in this section. So let me just expand all of them. So let's just expand all of them and press save and refresh, and this will go and bring in all the values from all the different sheets that we have in the background. Again, needless to say, this one is for GST. You'll see that if I expand this section, all your GST stuff, if it is applicable, will be here, and you can leave that as minimized. You don't have to worry about anything, and that's it. So always remember that only the blue cells are your input cells. The rest you do not have to worry about. You can just come in and put in values in your input cells, and once you are done, you can press save and next, and you can move on to the next sheet and not worry about all the tech that's happening here. But because I'm explaining everything for people, all sorts of people, the ones who want the least to do with this and the ones who want to get a better understanding, so I need to get into the detail and explain you what these things are. So I'll get into each of these sections in the next video, but as an overview, as you can see now that I'm going to collapse everything, it has brought in the values and all these things. Here, there are some values there. Okay, there's an error over here. Why is there an error? I'll explain to you in the next video. And all these values have come in, all your costs have come in, all the income that you are going to make has come in, and eventually your sale values have come in. So I'll catch you in the next video.